So let's talk about how do we gauge client net worth. Okay, so first of all, this is a tool I use with one of my clients. He said, I don't know how to, I said, what are your strengths? How are you getting your client? I don't know. The information is probably already there, okay? On one level, we can analyze present clients, but you also want to analyze past clients as well. Okay, list them all there. What are common denominators between the clients that you have there? And then convert these common denominators into services, products, or modules. What do I offer? And a lot of times we like to say we're selling ourselves. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, I've worked in startups for a long, long time, and they know I bring value. I'm a mentor. That's great to say perhaps in your marketing when you're trying to understand value of what you offer and what you're offering to your clients, or more importantly, what they're buying. You have to get down to the nitty-gritty. What are they buying? Because then that will allow you to price it out. Because you then assign income and expenses both to that person. And again, I have a practical example of how I did this with one client. So you can figure out how much is each client paying me net. And then of course mapping them. This is one project I did with one of my clients. He found that he had actually 3 types of ways of clients were buying his services. He essentially had 3 services, 1 A and B. Now I'm labeling them A and B because when he outsourced for additional work, A and B were the same price, a lower price, and he found one to be of a higher price. Again, I'm calling it whatever I want because that's how it helps me. Everything you're doing, tweak it as much as you need so that when you're looking at it, you can actually use it. So we realized as such, I got a full package client, gets 60 hours, split between 20, 20, and 20. Great. We know how much each of those hours work. If he outsources, it costs him 100 shekel an hour for service 1. A and B, it's 50 shekel an hour. And this is how many hours it takes. This is how much the company is paying to hire those outsourced people. The service budget, these were services he adds on as an added value. You get me, I also provide such and such and such. That costs him money. Okay? This minus this equals profit. Right? I know, basically, if I sell someone the full package, that's how much I'm making off of it. Now, mind you, this particular client had maxed out the number of hours of his salaried employees and was taking outsourced people to pick up the work. So for him, it was a very clear formula for how he wanted to understand net. But the hours could also be done instead of consulting hours, outsourced hours, could only be done with salaried employees. It's a little more complicated because, again, you have to take in not just how much he's working, but also the benefits. Then he found that he had a mid-range where people would take wouldn't take all 3 products, but a combination of the 2 of them, and then finally single service. And through that, we were able to then figure out, well, what's the net profit? Well, okay, great. I've got a home. How many new clients do I need to bring in? Right? Or what's most popular? Well, we looked at his 11 clients, and we basically said 0 right now of the clients have a full package. But 33%, obviously you can't split people in half, but for number purposes and formula purposes you can. 33%, 22%, 40, 11, and 44. He now knows also which workers, right, when we're talking about cutting costs, which workers are salary employees, are worth it to keep on versus not. Something that I thought was so integral to my business, I realized is not. And I was actually surprised at it. This, creating an average then of these numbers, 8,500 times 0, 6,120 times 33, this basically created then, this is how many clients you need to do, because I'm going to assume that every new client you bring in will be pretty much about to the same percentages you have now, assuming that nothing changes. You don't change your marketing, you don't change anything else. Now this tool also allows us to say, wait a second, it seems that A and B is what I need the most. Is the marketing I'm doing relating to what people seem to be buying the most? This tool then works not just as a way to analyze present clients, but also it's a good wake-up call for actually not what you think you're selling, but what people are actually buying. And that's always the more important of the two. Not what am I selling, but what are they buying, especially if you're selling multiple items. Right? And not if you're a makolet, fine. Okay, they're buying more bananas than they are milk. But if you're service-oriented, sometimes we kind of do, not a jack of all trades, but we list a couple things together And we kind of assume that everyone's taking the same thing, but most often it's not that case. And this is a great tool just to help us realize that. The other thing I use is client mapping. And there's a great online tool, Bubblus, which enables me to create maps. Right? This client directly gave me this client. I can choose to have the same color, which I generally do for clients, or I can choose not to have the same color. And again, I could have various different relationships because this client came from here, and then I have various campaigns and which clients came from there. It's a great tool. I'll list it when I post the comments. Bubblus. It's a great thing to play around with. Also, if you're using any sort of CRM, which is a customer relationship management software, definitely make sure that in the related to or connected to, you're putting who's been referring them. I use Insightly, by the way, to help me manage my customer relationships. It's a free tool. I pay $15 a month just to get a little bit upgraded. Insightly, Insightly. But there are a number of them out there that are free to use. They might limit users or fields, but you can, in there's I put it connected to, and then I can also add a relationship. So you can literally use a client mapping tool like this. A lot of people love using sticky notes. They'll put everything on the floor, and they're like standing on a chair, I kid you not, to get a bird's eye view of where their business is coming from. It might thanking the people who are giving you that business. Staff. There are only two kinds of staff. We're going to talk about how we know when to sort of start adding on staff. You can have salaried staff, contract with, right? That you're paying as an employee, or outsourced. I myself am an outsourced person, even for those people that I have an ongoing relationship with, which means that it cuts costs for them in certain areas, and they know they can always end the relationship without having to worry about severance or a variety of other things. Specifically speaking, employee, right, salaried staff. When you're calculating, each of them needs to be pulling in, working on projects that are 120% at least of their salary. We love to ask our question. The question is this person worth it? If they're not working on projects that are 120% of their weight, the answer is no. Now, it could very well be that in the future, you'll have enough outsourced people, and you'll pay a much lower fee than you do your salaried employees, that it might actually be worth it for you, and you don't have to follow the 120% principle. That's how bank managers, specifically Chavei Hanala, the management team, gets paid 60 to 70,000 shekel a month, right? But you have the people who are working at the branches who are making 7, 8, 10,000 shekel a month. If you're able to create such great disparity, then you don't necessarily have to work on this formula of the 120%. But people like us, small businesses, we generally have to follow the 120% rule. We got to pay them by the 10th of the month, and there are all sorts of mandatory benefits, as we mentioned before, and they're governed by law. Outsourced, it's per cost. Like I mentioned before, it's very easy to know whether or not it's worth it for me to take an outsourced person. I charge a client 5,000 shekel, the number of outsourced people comes to 3,000 shekel, 3,000 shekel profit. Woohoo. It's not by the 10th, it's according to whatever contract you sign. Sometimes within 15 days of when the invoice is given, the request for payment, not the invoice. Accounting terms here in Israel versus America, invoice when you're in the States, it's when you give someone a request for payment, a bill. Here in this country, an invoice is actually after they pay. Small details, it can be confusing though. Also, if you throw on the word retainer, in America, if you give someone a retainer, you're paying upfront. Here's $5,000, and I'm not paying you because you're working right now, $5,000, but as we work together over the next couple of months, it's a little bank, and I'm constantly using that $5,000. Israelis, when we talk about retainer, we're generally talking about a monthly retainer. You will give me a monthly retainer of 3,000 shekel a month. I actually, when I was speaking to someone, it's a good thing I realized he's made Aliyah about 5-10 years ago, and he's like, well, I don't know if I have the money for a retainer right now. I said, hold on. Are you talking about an upfront retainer, or are you talking about a monthly retainer? And I was using the word, to me, I was meaning monthly retainer, but he was actually meaning upfront retainer. And he said, oh, okay, it's monthly, fine, I can handle it. Outsourced, we have to pay that as opposed to mandatory benefits. So if we're talking just amount of cost, it's not up to maybe 30 or maybe 22 if we're not paying Keren Shtamut, but it is 17. However, I can get the money, the VAT back. Okay, if I'm buying furniture or whatever it is, I bought a component for my computer. I made sure to buy it on my company credit card and not my personal credit card. And I just saved myself up, I was looking at last month, I saved myself 88 shekel. Every little bit counts. How can a finance guy not keep track of his own finances, right? And then again, it's less about the law and more about per month in the contract. So what is the big difference? Why would I choose to go from outsourced to in-house? Outsourced to employee salary staff? My clients generally find sometimes they get better quality. As well as there's ownership. I want someone who's part of the team. Outsourced, they're not sitting with me, or they work in it whenever they have time. That is generally speaking what pushes people to make that commitment, is because they feel that they're not getting the quality. Now, one of my clients he started hiring a team. So he has a cadre now of 2 or 3 people on salary, and now he lets them have direct control over the outsourced people. Because before he used to have control over the outsourced people, and it was too much for him. So that was a way now to have more control about quality insurance, even though it's not necessarily him, because he's hired additional salary employee people who are being more on top of the outsourced people. That's generally speaking the way that it is. Before we get to the big question of about growth, let's just talk about different kinds of credit out there. Again, just some 101 basic things so we understand the tools that are available to us. When we have credit problems, it's very important to understand, is it a cash flow related credit problem, or is it a budget related problem? Are there expenses that I didn't realize exist, and therefore I'm going to be in trouble? I don't have enough income to meet expenses? Or is it a cash flow? Meaning the money will come, but it's coming in a week too late. So first we have the line of credit. This will help us with cash flow challenges. I'm going to compare the two, line of credit versus a loan, which is the next thing. This helps us discrepancies with income and expenses. And we want to use it infrequently. When you find yourself too much in the red, it's a problem. Not just because it's a problem, but because if that's really the case, you might want to have a loan instead of a line of credit, and I'll explain why in just a minute. When you do take a loan, use it to invest in the company. How can I increase the way that my company is doing business so I will be more profitable? It is not used to pay yourself back for startup costs. And I have clients who've unfortunately done this, and they find themselves in a hole, not just because they haven't changed their business to help them be leaner and meaner, but now when they do need a bank loan to invest, to hire more people, or or to buy equipment, they can't because they've already used up the relationship they have with the credit that the bank is willing to offer them. Whenever I'm speaking with clients, I'm less concerned about the hole now than do we have a plan to get out of it. Because once we have a plan, I can always find an investor, but generally speaking, if we're talking anywhere from 20 to 60,000 shekel, there are a number of sources that you can borrow from. Some are more reputable, will be cheaper, and some are less, to get yourselves out of the hole. But if you're unsure how you're going to get yourself out of the hole, then really this credit can just actually exacerbate the problem. Again, because we're talking about increasing profits. Some of those you can get money, by the way. Israel Free Loan Association gives you up to $30,000 for a private individual, and between 60 to 90 if you're a small business. The Israeli government has a loan that is backed by the country. It's called Halva'ah B'Arvut HaMedina. They give up to 500,000 shekel. It's a whole process. I can speak with people after the session, but you do have to put down 10% of the loan, and it can't come from the loan itself. But this is also a great way to convince banks who might not want to lend you money to actually lend you the money. And of course, you have a variety of places which are willing to give you 20 to 50,000 shekel, no questions asked, but you might pay a higher rate of interest. And banks will do this as well. Bank of Jerusalem, personal loans, 56,000 shekel. They have a list of criteria. Great to get. Not great to get, but very easy to get, excuse me. But it comes with a cost. Please don't use it to pay yourself back. Please. Refinance credit. Sometimes it's actually worth it to take out credit to pay off credit because of an interest rate. And also it seems like all of us grew up in the States. Everyone talks about consolidating debt, refinancing, right? This also talks about the cash flow at different dates. If I have to pay only one creditor as opposed to 4 or 5, sometimes it's better for me. Sometimes refinance or doing that debt consolidation can sometimes cost you a lot. So I'm not saying it's a blanket good answer, but understand that sometimes, especially if you're able to get, let's say, a 30,000 shekel loan from the Israel Free Loan Association, so there's no interest payments. Hey, if I'm 30,000 shekel in the hole from a loan at a bank, I just saved myself 5%. And depending on your cash flow, that could be a lot. because right there, the loan is actually helping make you money. You can take it from your personal or from your business. You can even do home equity loans to help out your business, but understand that by taking it from your business, you add an extra layer of protection. This is why people incorporate. The difference between, let's say, being an atzmai, being versus a ba'am, an LTD here in Israel, legally speaking, you are protected. I mean, sometimes it also gives a more professional look. If you're a ba'am as opposed to an atzmai, yes or no, that's for arguments for another time. But legally speaking, I would be remiss if I didn't say it doesn't add an extra level of protection. And last but not least, how does all this help me grow? Okay, when we're talking about growing, there are only two reasons why we want to grow. Either we're going to be earning more, or our quality of life is going to be improved. Those are really the only two reasons why we want to grow our business. Taking on more clients, if the net is the same thing, why do I need the hassle? And we're going to grow because of either two reasons. We have a surplus, or because we're taking credit from the bank. That's really it. Okay, the question obviously is, okay, great, how am I going to know I'm going to be able to pay myself back? That's where all this other stuff that we mentioned before comes into play. And a lot of what I help my clients on is actually the implementation. They don't have the patience or really the time. It's not even that their finance done. But again, part of what I do, I say that I take care of the business so you can run your business. No one wants to actually create a business so they can keep track of billing and invoice. Awesome. No, I want to create, I want to consult, I want to plan, strategize, market. I love social media. I don't love billing and chasing my clients. I don't love trying to understand what the heck my bookkeeper is talking about. So the implementation is, generally speaking, the harder part of everything I've been talking about. Keeping track, taking a step back once a month, once a quarter, to understanding, am I meeting the goals that I set out for myself, and if not, why? That's it for the first subject. It was a lot to take in, and I appreciate everyone's patience. Questions? I've specifically left everything that we spoke about here so that anything you want to speak, this is everything that we covered. Again, thank you very much for your patience. It can be annoying. It can be a lot to deal with. I'll tell you flat out. As someone who deals in finance, what is the one thing I least like doing on my personal time? Taking care of my own finances. That's what people pay me for. Who do I pay? Right? Who watches the watchers? Yes, your name, please?
My name is Michal.
Michal.
I just had a question about, you mentioned the 14,000 as sort of like the mark for an employee to earn before they start getting hit with tremendous amounts of tax.
It's not a tremendous amount. You jump up from 0 to about 20, you jump up to 21% at about the 9,000 mark. Again, speak to your local Orthodox accountant about this.
Okay.
And then you jump up from 21 to 25, about the 14,000 mark.
On only that which is above 14?
On salary. I'm talking about salary.
But on 0 to 14 or on 14,001 and up?
Basically, I can tell you for myself, and after I want to hear your question.
Sorry.
I only started seeing tax on my tush after I was paid myself a salary more than 8,500 to 9,000 shekel. And up until then, and again, calculated annually, okay? So let's say you get a bonus from your boss, as long as it doesn't affect your annual, you're still in the same tax bracket. Now back to your question.
So my question is, are there any pre-tax deductions? Because if I recall correctly, in the States, there are certain things you can take out before the taxes
Absolutely. Absolutely. So first of all, the benefits that we spoke about in Karen Hishtamut, the beauty of it is that it's taken before tax, and when you take it out after 6 years to use it, you don't have to pay tax on that either. By the way, you do have to report when you do take out the Karen Hishtamut to the U.S. taxes. Not taxable for your whatever tax you do in Israel, but it is taxable. It can theoretically, you have to go into the calculation when you do your American taxes. That's why I put things on my company card also, right? We talked about the salary. One thing I didn't actually talk about is the tax, Mas Haknasa tax on your business, on your profit. Mas Haknasa takes from your business profit, which by the way includes your salary. You don't get taxed twice. Mas Haknasa, you're not getting one over Mas Haknasa by giving yourself a high salary and leaving your company with zero surplus. Because if they're not going to take it from your surplus, they'll take it from your salary. Right? You either pay Mas Haknasa as an individual from your tlush, from your salary, or else if you have extra left over, they're taking 25% at the end of the year. Additionally, it's important to mention that there's something called mikdamot, which is after your first year, Mas Haknasa will now say, congratulations, you're solvent, you're starting to make a profit. Let's talk projections. I think you're going to be making X amount, and therefore once every month or two, I'm going to actually start asking for that. It could, generally speaking, for small businesses, around the 8% mark. Now, my accountant was like, hey, by the way, we're going to start paying in mikdamot, this is my second year of business, to Mas Haknasa every 2 months. I said, I don't have the business or cash flow to support 8%. So he's going to ask for another reduction, a bitul, for this year. All these things are pre-tax. And again, you always have to think about when you're doing it. And for an atzmai, it's the same thing. But from your business, you have pre-tax, so I have no surplus, and I can max out, give myself 100,000 shekels salary, so I have no surplus there. So Mas Haknasa doesn't charge me 25% of my profit, but they will take it for my salary then. So they always get their man.
Okay, so just basically the
I would go over.
Nishtalmud.
Let's just say this, go over with your account, because there are things that I'll talk about which I'm not gonna, I can list you 5 and still miss another 10. But yes, everything can be taken off of your company, and again, as an atzmai as well. There are a lot of things, so definitely sit down with your account and figure out what those things exactly are. Name please.
Shmuel Harris.
Yes, Shmuel,
So
I answered that before. Yes, Shmuel.
wouldn't it be a simple calculation in terms of salary, or not giving yourself the salary, to give yourself the salary up to the 25%, which is what you're going to be charged with company tax, so up to whether it's 14,000 or whatever it is, and then it would make sense to give yourself such a high salary.
So the question is that if you're going to be getting taxed on your salary more than 25%, which is the surplus number, maybe then you shouldn't ever give yourself such a high salary. There are reasons to do it, but that's really a specific question involving tax, so I'm going to pass on it. And by the way, if you don't have a accounting partner who's real comfortable asking questions to, I'll be happy to refer you to a number of people that I work with who can help you. And by the way, most accountants will sit with you for at least a half an hour of an hour without charging you to convince you that they have added value and you should use that. That's a very good question. And these are things that you want to kind of sit down with your accountant and say, listen, what should I boost up? Should I take a lower salary now? Or give myself a high salary, just not withdraw the salary now? Definitely. And as you're kind of trying to build your business, these are the questions you want your accountant to tell you about, so you don't wind up with bigger tax issues. Yes?
Nachum.
No? Nice to see you.
So, staff question. Let's say you're somebody's officially he's outsourced, but he's working for you long term. A few people have said to me, well, they can come along and say, yes, he's officially outsourced, but look, he's been working for you for 6 years, and you're paying him every month. You really owe him all this.
That's actually an important point. If someone is staying on very, very long term, he could theoretically claim certain benefits if he is. Because he could basically say he's salaried even though he's not salaried. It's important to speak about with a lawyer because it is an issue. Some of it has to do with the fact of are they an atzmai or are they not an atzmai? Because if they're a company and they're paying themselves a salary, you can't basically say he's a salary of 2 different places. It's more of an issue of if you're hiring atzmai for long term.
Anyone has questions about that, I could.
Okay.
After.
Michal is here.
Sorry.
Fantastic.
I'm happy
What do
to
you do,
answer.
by the way? Just
Oh yeah, I'm an attorney. So we handle employment, we handle taxation,
Right.
and we handle.
Case in point. Like I said,
Inheritance.
speak to the attorney. Fantastic. Yes, did you have a question? And then in the back, yeah.
Michal Lyons.
Yes.
In your section about net client worth, there's a prevailing attitude today of giving away free on the understanding you'll charge later. How do you balance what you give away for free at a loss in order to expose yourself more? Many large companies do that. Once I heard a suggestion that you should give away what your client wants and sell him what he needs. What would be your attitude, or if you have a model to deal with how to fine-tune and balance that relationship between
Yeah.
free against charge?
I will tell you, I give less to Nefesh B'Nefesh only now than I used to. You know, meaning someone's interested in banking and finance, can you speak to him? Generally speaking, the answer now is no. Again, I find other ways to give back to Nefesh B'Nefesh. But I have no problem speaking about person because I am not embarrassed by that. I speak to people less. Again, I find other ways to give, so I'm not. But the idea is that it's my time. It's about time. Okay. I will give someone an hour free, what I call an introduction meeting. And sometimes during the introduction meeting, someone will say, so should I bring my financial report? I said, no, that will leave when I actually start the job, right? So meaning I'll be happy to find out, are we a good fit? And I'll speak to you, I'll throw some subjects out there, but even in that, when I write a proposal, I'm trying to convince them that I understand you so well because we took a half an hour to get to know each other, that I can then sell you more. I'm not trying to sell them less. And therefore, it also means that sometimes I'll say, listen, it's just not the right fit. You need X, Y, and Z. And when it comes to, I personally feel, I believe karma, I'm a big, big believer in karma, right? I'll be happy to speak to people, 10 to 20, 30 minutes, depending on my schedule. Ask nothing in return. Someone just asks a question, how to, founding a nonprofit, do this. I believe in karma. I believe, also again, ways that I get to give back. But again, I limit it as really an hour. And I've said that to some people, and some of those people have then taken me for jobs. Really, if you want that specific thing, I'm sorry, but that's actually what I do.
Now, if you're talking about not in your industry, a startup in a different industry altogether, is there a formula to balance when a person starting up is looking for clients initially, trying to drive traffic into his business, to be extremely generous, to be...
So first of all, that's very much sector specific. A lot of times, for example, the best thing, let's talk about apps. Right? Apps are a very nice example, and because it's so sector specific, that's pretty much the only answer I'll give, and we'll go to the next question. Because it's so important to show beta users, they'll give away for free. Log me in, for example, people who want to access their computer remotely, log me in for years, offer them free of charge. Now, it could be literally 10 years later, they started charging people for it, and they're charging a lot for it. But you know what? People have known them for, so it's a question of how long can your investors support you? How long can you support yourself? If that's the case, that you want to then give away something for free, well, what else are you doing to earn a living? Do you have two different products, something that you can sell free, or something that you can then charge for? Like I said, it's a big, big question, but that's how I deal with these things, and hopefully those principles, and that's all I'm going to answer is the principles, because it can be so specific, will help you out as well. Yes?
If you're an ex-money and right now you're still doing it the notebook way, that then you bring to your accountant and all of that because you just pay for the notebook and your time, are the costs of going with online automated tools, do that really adds a lot of value and really makes things that more efficient?
Okay, let's be very, very specific. First of all, we had a great session. Our first session was on creating a digital office. Some of what I'll say from there, and other than my own example, when you say online tools, specifically speaking, what are you talking about?
I'm talking
CRM? Are you talking about billing and invoicing?
Yeah, billing and invoicing and just keeping track of expenses.
Right. So first of all, I switched from paper to online. Okay? I suffered a loss by switching because I paid 300 shekel to order it, and then halfway through I was like, not even halfway through, I'm like, this is just, I'm mailing things, I'm doing this. Peter Deutsch. Oh gosh, there's a great, literally a guru on management called Peter Drucker, who said, he basically, essentially said, if knowing then what you know now, you do things differently, stop. Do it differently. So I did, I took his advice, I sucked up the 300 shekel or the 250 shekel loss because I only used a fraction, and I went online. I use Green Invoice. I love their interface. I use it for my clients.
Is it valid here?
They also offer things that are digitally signed, which is a new thing. I think it's wonderful. I email clients, it saves me tons of time. My clients are getting things timely. Obviously, it's environment friendly. My bookkeeper, right? At the end of every month, Green Invoice gives me a summary of every person that I've gotten money from, right? Of all the cheshboniot, all the invoices I've produced. He wants to get them individually. Can you please give me all your invoices? No, I told him. The system does something that's called a doch hachnasot, an income summary, which lists everyone's name, 2 dots, a hoop number, how much they paid, how much mom they paid, in one convenient PDF, instead of me having to download 10 different things. And he said, well, it's better for me. Sorry, don't care. It's better for me not to. And it has all the information on it. That is the beauty of sometimes using these things. You can export it to Excel. I am a big believer in online. What's the downside though?
Expense, right?
The expense Green Invoice is 17 shekel a month.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Secure.
Okay, and that's for 20 copies, 20 documents, so invoices or bills, whatever it might be, you have a total of 20 a month. It's only in Hebrew. For those people who are less comfortable in Hebrew, heck, you know what? I will be happy to teach you to use it. I think it is that. The green invoice specifically, I really like the invoice. There are 5, 6, 10 different companies out there. There is one, if you just look for invoicing, one of them is available in English, maybe Invoice for You. One of them actually does have an English interface. I'm a big, big believer in it. I email all the stuff. I scan my bills and send them to my clients. Not that the accountant doesn't need the originals, but therefore I'm less pressured to give him the originals for him to make the tlush and decide whatever Masa stuff he does. So I'll scan it, send them at the beginning of the month, then over the next week or two I'll give them the originals. So they'll have it on there, but definitely digital all the way.
A second part, yes. And Sylvie, related to the questions that were asked before, has to do with the culture here. So far, I like to do fixed cost, okay, for what I'm doing. One of the things that I'm uncomfortable with is getting into very lengthy negotiation. But it seems that here, if you are not willing to, basav and batan, so should I assume that the best thing to do, especially dealing with natively born Israelis, is just to assume that I'm going to have to negotiate it down, give it up a little bit, and then bring it down?
Sometimes yes. Sometimes you give a higher price just so that when you negotiate, you can get the price that you want. Absolutely.
Okay.
Originally, I only charged people by the hour. I wanted to give them the keys. I wanted them to be in the driver's seat. They could then turn the faucet off whenever they felt I'd done enough work. Want me to prepare the business plan? Great. Want me to prepare it and present it to your board or your investors? Great. Want me to stay on for implementation? Great. The problem is people have a fear of the unknown. And when they're paying by the hour, a lot of times they just don't know. Now, sometimes people, like lawyers, that's the way that they work. And I don't mean that as a negative way.
No, I have a good strategy for how to do it.
Yeah, so maybe then afterwards, I just want to speak about the banking also. And it can't be helped. As of right now, what I do, I offer people both. One strategy you might want to also do is not get into the various modules. For example, they're going to take 6 different modules that I offer. I might only give a total cost at the very end. So as I don't break up each individual cost, I say, well, you take 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. That's why for this project I'll take 6,000. Because when they start to hassle you, they'll start to nitpick on various modules and services that you offer. Well, I've got a friend who could do that. No, I'm offering you the complete package. The complete package has the various services, and for that I'm going to charge you 6,000. If you want, you could even say, if it's per module, right, the sum total is 8,000 shekel, but if you take all the modules, here's my 15% discount, so it's already there as part of what you're offering.
Okay.
It already says, aha, so now I can get him out, save 15%. Yeah. And there are all sorts of, again, one of the subjects we're going to be doing next time is going to be, like I said, analyzing your tlush as a boss, which will obviously help you if you're a worker as well. But the one after that is marketing to Israelis. People, enough social media stuff out there. You want the social media? There was MegaCon last week, and there are conferences and things how to use social media. Specifically, what's the Israeli mentality and what tools are available for the Israeli market. So hopefully that will also help you out in trying to understand a little bit more about how their brains tick, because they look like us, but we know that they're not. Just kidding. Achi, right? By the way, as a general principle, I never start to worry when I'm dealing with my Israeli clientele until they say, don't worry. I'll call the other say, which is not responding. I wasn't worried until right about now. What are you not telling me? Yes?
Let's say someone has a startup.
One second. Are there any other questions about this? And then we'll get into banking, and then we can also go back to this stuff as well. But I want to make sure that you get a little bit about banking. So this will be the last question, and we'll go on to the next subject. Great.
Name's Barry. Let's say somebody has a startup, and
Startups in Israel? That's crazy.
and he's not breaking even.
Yeah.
How would one approach it in terms of, is it always beneficial to balance by the end of the year? Is there some way to save yourself?
Sure. It's two things will give you the answer. One, how much money did you save up? Meaning how much can you float yourself? And the other is your forecasting. using the things that we've spoken about today, what are your predictions? And so people will say, very often people love throwing around these very general things, but these truisms like, never ever expect to make a profit in your first 6 months. Oh, you profit by your first year, that's great. I mean, people like to say that, and and it's good when you have been around, you say, oh, well, great, it's my year mark, and I was just profitable last month, so I guess I'm better than average. But there really is no one-size-fits-all answer. How much money have you saved up? What are your milestones? When do you need to reach the milestones? And if you're not reaching them, maybe you need to rethink. That's really all that it comes down to. Like I said, simple in theory, harder in implementation, as well as the fact that we all love to not drop things that we put our blood, sweat, and tears into. But sometimes you got to. Banking? Great. And we're not even talking about banking in general. We're talking about simply banking for your business. These are a few things about how business banking works here in Israel, which means I'm already assuming you've been faced with the system, the banking system before, that you've been faced by the man. Stare down the man, and you're here to live and tell the tale. Siri. Okay, anything that Siri says must be helpful, right? Much like she's the antithesis to my Peter Baelish in the previous one, right? So when it comes to banking, there's an American invasion. You've probably heard FATCA, Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, which basically means, technically speaking, the banks have to know whether or not you are American, and if you are, you have to sign additional forms. It's part and parcel. Expect to have more paperwork when you sign accounts, even more if you're a Baal Shlitai controlling party of your business, as well as expect that every 6 months or so to a year, your bank calls you in to sign more forms. There is new technology out there, which depending on how you do your business, you can take use of it or not. And this also changes by the technology is changing every 6 months, every couple of years, whatever it might be. You'll have banks that were in the very bottom of the technology totem pole, all of a sudden have produced a new website, which greatly changes things, and all of a sudden they're now a contender. Increase regulations, not just by the Americans. Rotating managers, I'll explain to you what that means, but basically you get to know the people in there, and then they change. Gosh darn it, right? There's an Israeli law that says every 5 years branch managers must change. This is to prevent, in this country, it's not just guilty until proven innocent when it comes to taxes. The exception proves the rule. So you have one bank manager who abuses the system. Now theoretically, they can all abuse the system. There are 2 sectors here in this country that people say their lessons are learned in blood. One, unfortunately, is the army, where when fatal accidents happen or, unfortunately, losses in war, they then, for the next war, they change the way that they do things. The other is banking, where you have someone who's absconded with money, abused the system, and now a whole new set of regulations is there to really combat that one case. And they will take the exception to prove the rule. This means that you might actually have to change your account every 3 to 5 years. You're not weird if you choose to do this. You might decide, instead of actually switching accounts, I might just open up a second one and use one for certain kind of things and the other for other kinds of things. I might get a loan. One bank gave me a loan, but I don't want to use them for my ongoing. One bank I do want to use for my ongoing, but they're not going to give me a loan. Just realize that that's a possibility for your business specifically. The thinking. Black screen also everything gets dark. This is the rule. When it comes to service by no good bank, people are like, what's the best bank out there? You've been in 2 different banks, what's it? Essentially, they're all kind of the same. I used to work for the bank. I really felt it was a bank that was different because they only had 8 or 9 branches, and it really was different. The whole bank was geared towards private banking, but even then they've been now absorbed by Bank HaBeinLeumi, and things are up in the air. So I really can't point to any banks better than the other. I try and maintain some contacts with multiple banks out there, and again, I pair my clients or people directly with the banks. I don't take referral fees, like I said, and sometimes I really just cross my fingers and hope for the best. What are some of the digital services that are available, which you might be able to take advantage of as a business? Check deposits. This is now a thing, but it's limited. Mizrahi also recently added in, they didn't used to have this. Bank Leumi has had it for a couple of years. You can scan and deposit Bank Leumi checks into your Bank Leumi account. It's available but limited. Same thing with Mizrahi. America, by the way, everyone loves complaining. Contrasting Israel to America, and America to Israel, and Israel's better than this. The countries have developed differently, and therefore things that make sense in certain countries don't make sense in the others. Horot Keva, everyone loves saying, look how advanced Israel is. We've had Horot Keva for literally decades, standing orders. America just got automatic bill pay, what, 10 years ago? We're so behind the times. Things were so bad in Israel that you couldn't trust anyone to pay you. And therefore, the companies were only willing to do business if they basically got a hook into your bank account. Why do banks issue credit cards here in Israel versus not in the States, when we're so advanced? Credit cards refused to work with you because they didn't trust you. Wait a second, your bank is promising, and this is what it is, regardless of what your credit limit is, your bank will always pay a credit card that is issued through the bank. Only recently have there been extra bank credit cards, but that's why it is, not because we're so advanced. So just like, check deposits in America, there is a law that started in 2004 called Check 21, checking for the 21st century. So there's been a whole push by the country for scan checks. But in Israel, that's not the case. You can wire from your account directly, sometimes through the app, or sometimes you have to go into your account through your mobile. I might be making or break it for you. I did we were at a movie and we were figuring out, he paid for the movie, so let's give him money back. Ubank doesn't have an app to allow me to transfer, so I have to go online, much less accessible, but I was still able to do it through my mobile device. Understand that if your company has 2 signatures required, you might not be able to take advantage of this. Okay, because the website might not have any ability to handle 2 signatures on an order. Phoebe does. Leumi, I believe, does. Mizrahi does not. Now, there might be ways around it, but understand that might vary. You can convert money online, and we'll talk a little bit more about how transfers can be done. There's also something which they were talking super branches. Super is in the Latin word above, not like they're awesome. Bank Mizrahi, for example, has, and they're not the only one, that if you go through their online branches, you're not tied down into any one particular branch, which tends to be a pet peeve for a lot of people. That if my branch closes, I have to move to another thing. They are this super, this above an Uber branch, which means that they're a little more flexible. You're able to speak to a variety of bankers. Again, look into it. Sometimes there are even online tellers. Bank of Jerusalem offers a weird kind of thing that you can go and walk into a virtual branch. You have to see a lot of times we don't care. Most of the things that we need, all banks are the same. We may or may not be luckier because our business account was already there and now they're adding on different features. Generally speaking, especially with fees, but we'll get to that in a second, but really, a lot of times it just doesn't make a difference, unless you want credit. One thing I learned the hard way, I was a banker, I'd been in the system for 9 years, I'm going to teach them what to do. I'm sitting there with a client in Pagi, Ubank where I worked, where I literally opened up accounts. I recruited the client, I then signed them on papers, I met with legal and regulations to really understand the stuff. I was very, very lucky in terms of the experience I got. So I was able to argue with people in Pagi, which is part of the Phoebe network where Ubank was also part of it. I said, you're doing it incorrectly. As a matter of fact, I can even tell you the name of the form to do it correctly. Do you know how helpful that was? 0. They don't care. They have their way of doing things. I was opening up an account for someone in Bank Mizrahi. I'm trying to predict their questions. Well, surely you must mean such and such. She didn't. She didn't care. It actually cost my clients time, but they weren't paying by time. Talk about flat fees. Because I tried to be helpful, to predict, to go according to the spirit of the law, and to sometimes, I literally knew that it was the regulations. It still doesn't help. If they say the sky is green, nod your head yes, and work accordingly. I promise. It's that simple. Okay, because you want to get over the hurdle of the account opening, so just operate your bank account. And that'll be, generally speaking, it's regular to do that. before we get, again, we'll talk about fees in just a second, account name, because it's very important. Okay, understand that your account name will match your company name. Okay, this is more of an issue with nonprofits, because sometimes they'll get checks that are made out to a project name or a campaign name and not the company name. Less of an issue. For companies, really not an issue when it comes to Atzmaim, because a lot of times I haven't encountered a bank yet that will not create a separate name for an account to match your doing business as name. If you're an Atzmaim, anyone here an Atzmaim? Great. Nachum, what do you call your business?
It's actually called Nachum Shore.
Damn you. Someone else give me a good example. Someone that has a business name that is, they're an Atzmaim. Handy Randy. It just came to me, right? Handy Randy is an appliance guy, right? I believe, I'm not sure if he's a, let's say for an example, he's not a Baham, he's an Atzmaim. You could run a business as an Atzmaim, okay? Pay people and all that sort of stuff. His bank was able to probably, I'm gonna take a look, you know what, the heck with Handy Randy. I know, as someone who opened up accounts at UBank, I was able to do it. Okay, someone is an Atzmaim, as long as they can prove that there's a connection between the name that they want to use and the fact that they're an individual, you'll add what's called a doing business add name to the account, so they can accept checks or wires either as their venture name or as their individual. Much harder when you're a company, okay? If it's check or wire transactions, the bank will not notice. If it's actual physical checks, they might bounce the check if it doesn't match, and if it's an international wire, they also have to check things. So really make sure that people are forwarding you, just realize the account name is going to be called, regardless of how cool your marketing campaign is, if, people will have to write checks made out to your boring company name. Like I just mentioned. Anyone know what this is? Not a gun. It's the Colt patent revolver, the first revolver out there. Game changer. People also refer to it as the Great Equalizer. If you do a search for the Great Equalizer today, like 40 people out there are like, education is the Great Equalizer. Well, when it comes to banking, fees, the fee tracks that they created a number of years back is the Great Equalizer. It's the reason why it doesn't make much of a difference what bank you use if you don't need credit, and if you don't need anything out of the ordinary, because they've basically shrunk everything into these tracks, which we'll talk about. What is the basic track, okay? You have 10 automatic transactions, and you have 1 clerk transaction. You'll pay anywhere from, depending on the bank, anywhere from 6 to 9 shekel. Do I care if I'm paying more than 2-3 shekel, and I feel like I'm getting, cheated by the bank? I don't care. I don't want to open up another bank account. Whatever. Morchav, the expanded masmul, right? They're called masmulim. By the way, as a small business, you can choose not to take a fee track. It generally does. It always pays to get a fee track. Obviously, you pay more. Now, this is a little more discrepancy as to how much you pay. UBank was 35 shekel, Bank was 25 shekel. But again, we're not talking about hundreds of shekels of difference. Yeah, by the end of the year, there might be 100, 200 shekel difference. But for 100 or 200 shekels, I'm not going to be able to open another account. Okay, like I said, the more that no one wants to deal with banks. There is one caveat though. You have to be defined as a small business. The masulim, the tracks, exist for individuals and small businesses, which is either in your first year of operation, or if you can prove that your budget, your turnover is less than 5 million shekel a year, and you can prove that either by giving them your financial report, your Doch Kaspi, or through a letter from your accountant. And then you can benefit from the fee tracks. You might think of opening up multiple accounts. Generally speaking, it's only worth the hassle if it's a truly separate project, or if you're an Atzmaim. Okay, if you're an Atzmaim, sometimes you want to be able to better keep track of things. Separate the business from the personal, even though as an Atzmaim, there is no difference, and it's all up to you to prove. Okay, to prove what is business and what's not business. Generally speaking, for nonprofits, for businesses, unless the incomes and expenses are truly separate and independent, keep track of it internally. You don't have to open up a new account. Just realize that when you open up this new account, it might be for a project or for a product. Banks don't care. They have their own internal regulations how they're going to call the account. They might name it towards the product, or they might just call it company name 2. International transfer. This seems to be a hot thing, okay? Obviously, you can do things through the banks. And the banks will take a minimum, generally it's about $20 to $25. But it's really, the fee 0.175% is the lowest you'll find out there. With a
What is the
minimum of
lowest again?
$20.
The lowest fee?
It's always a percentage. Generally 0.175% is the lowest bank, and it can go up to 0.19, 0.2, with minimums of either $20 to $25 depending on the bank. By the way, currencies, this is currency and credit. These are the two things that might really actually affect whether or not you're going to open up a bank account somewhere. You can do it through exchange brokers, international wire.